It is July, and your flower borders are starting to go over. That first big flush of the season is fading. The catmint has sprawled open and flopped in the middle. The salvia spikes have gone brown. The whole bed is looking a little tired, a little scruffy, a little past it. And you are doing the one thing that guarantees it stays that way. Nothing. Because here is the instinct, and I understand it completely. Cutting back a healthy, living plant, one that is still throwing a few flowers, feels like vandalism. It feels destructive. It feels wrong. So you tidy up a dead flower here and there, and otherwise you leave the border to coast through summer. And by August, it is a sea of brown and sprawl. And that instinct, that hesitation to cut, is exactly the mistake. Most gardeners get this completely wrong. The master gardeners have a line for this that I love. They say, at this time of year, you must learn to be cruel to be kind. Because cutting your perennials back now, hard in the heat of July, while some of them are still flowering, is the single thing that transforms a border that quits in August into one that blooms until frost. Here is the number that should change your whole summer. Most perennials bloom for 3 to 4 weeks, but some of them, cut back correctly and fed, will bloom for 3 to 4 months. Same plant. The only difference is whether somebody was brave enough to cut it. But, and this is the whole video, you cannot do this to every plant, because your border is really 3 completely different kinds of plant, and each one needs the opposite treatment. Cut the wrong one, and you throw away the best thing it does all year. By the end of this, you will know exactly which of your perennials to cut, which to leave, how far to cut, and when, with the plants named. But first, you have to understand what a flower actually is, because once you do, the whole thing makes sense. Here is the one thing you have to understand, and it reframes the entire job. A flower is not there for your enjoyment. A flower is a machine for making seeds. That is its only purpose. From the plant's point of view, a bloom is not a gift to you. It is a step in reproduction. The flower opens, it gets pollinated, and then it starts building seeds. And the moment a plant has successfully set its seed, it gets the signal that its work for the year is done. Mission accomplished. And it slows down, or stops flowering altogether. Why keep making flowers? It already succeeded. So now, watch what happens when you cut. When you remove a fading flower before it can finish setting seed, you take away the plant's success. From its point of view, it failed. It tried to reproduce, and it did not get there. So it has to try again. And trying again means making more flowers. That is the whole engine behind everything in this video. You are not tidying the plant. You are denying it the finish line. Every flower you cut is a failure you have handed the plant, and the plant answers a failure by blooming again. So your job in July, for a great many of your perennials, is simply to keep them from ever succeeding. Keep resetting that cycle, and they keep flowering. But here is the catch that runs through this whole video. Not every plant plays this game, and that is the single most important thing to get right. So before you cut anything, you have to ask one question about each plant. Which of 3 kinds is this? And do me a favor, drop a comment and tell me what perennials fill your borders. Coneflowers, catmint, daylilies, salvia, coreopsis, whatever you have got the most of. Because the answer to that question decides everything. Let me show you the 3 kinds. So let's start with the first kind of perennial, and it is the biggest group, and it is the one this whole cruel to be kind idea is built for. These are the repeat performers. The plants that will rebloom, gladly, if you cut them back after their first flush. You know these plants: catmint, Hardy geraniums, the cranesbills, coreopsis, salvia, yarrow, blanket flower, the gaillardia, veronica, shasta daisies, bee balm, garden phlox. These are the workhorses of a summer border, and every one of them will give you a second act if you ask for it correctly. So here is how you ask, and it depends on how the plant is built. For a plant that flowers all over in a mound, like coreopsis, catmint, or hardy geranium, you do not deadhead flower by flower. That is madness, and it takes all afternoon. You shear it. Take your head shears and cut the whole plant back by about 1/3 to 1/2, straight across, down to where you can see healthy green growth below. It feels brutal. Do it anyway. In a few weeks, that plant comes back as a fresh, tidy green mound, and then it flowers again. For a plant with flowers on top of leafy stems, like salvia, yarrow, or a shasta daisy, same idea. A brave shearing by about half, always stopping above healthy foliage. And for the tall spike plants, like veronica or phlox, cut the spent flower spike back down to the first set of strong side shoots, and those side shoots will often push a second, smaller flush. Now, the rule that sits under all of it, and it is the same rule from the lavender world. Always cut back to healthy growth. Leave green on the plant. You are cutting into living, leafy growth, never down into bare, dead stems. Look at the plant when you are done, and it should still be a living green mound, just a smaller, neater one. And here is the step that almost everyone skips, and it is the difference between a good rebloom and a disappointing one. Feed them. Think about what you have just asked this plant to do. It spent a huge amount of energy making that first flush of flowers. Now you have cut it back and demanded a second one. If you do not refuel it, you are asking it to build a second bloom on an empty tank. So right after you cut, give it a feed and a good drink of water. A balanced fertilizer, or a scattering of compost worked in around the base, and water it well. That is what powers the encore. And 2 quick things that protect the whole border. First, timing. Get this done in the heart of summer, but do not leave it too late, because that new growth needs time to mature. As a rule, stop this kind of hard cutting back by late summer, so you are not pushing tender new shoots into the first frost. And second, your tools. Whenever you are moving from plant to plant with the shears, wipe the blades with alcohol between plants. A mixed border is exactly how a disease travels, one cut at a time, from a sick plant to a healthy one. Clean blades stop it. Now, here is the payoff, the number I gave you at the start, and it is worth repeating because it is the whole reason to bother. A perennial left alone blooms for 3 to 4 weeks, and then it is done. That same perennial, cut back and fed at the right moment, can bloom for 3 to 4 months. You are not just tidying the plant, you are multiplying its season by 3 or 4, and you can even use this on purpose, to time things. Going away in August? Cut a plant back now and you can push its peak a couple of weeks, so it performs when you are home to see it. That is the first group. Cut them, feed them, and they reward you. But the second group is where people go wrong, because it looks exactly the same, and it will not play along. Here is the second kind of perennial, and it is the trap. Because these plants look exactly like the first group. They are perennials. They flower. They fade. Everything about them says, "Cut me back, and I'll rebloom." And they will not. They are genetically programmed to bloom just once a year, and no amount of cutting changes that. This is where good, well-meaning gardeners waste real effort. They shear one of these plants back after it flowers, they feed it, they water it, and they wait for a second show that is never, ever coming. The plant was not built for it, so you need to know these by name. Peonies. They bloom gloriously, once, and that is the deal. Sea thrift. Delphiniums mostly. Old-fashioned columbine. Astilbe. Bearded iris. These are your one-and-done perennials. The show is spectacular, and it is finite. Now, that does not mean you never touch them. It means you cut them for the right reason, which is tidiness and the plant's health, not a second bloom you are not going to get. So with these, you still deadhead the spent flowers, because a fading flower is not attractive, and because removing it stops the plant pouring energy into making seed it does not need to make, which sends that energy back into the roots for next year instead. You are grooming the plant and strengthening it for next season. You are just not expecting an encore. And the honest part, because that is what this channel does. If you have got one of these and you cut it back hoping for round 2 and nothing happens, you did not do anything wrong and the plant is not failing. It simply does not rebloom. Enjoy the once, cut it tidy, and let it build for next year. So already you can see the problem with all that cut your perennials back in July advice floating around out there. It is half right. Cut the repeat performers, yes. But do it to a peony expecting a second flush, and you are just standing in the garden feeding a plant that already gave you everything it had. Now, before the third group, which is the one people get most wrong of all, a quick word. Quick one, because I want to name the skill this whole video is really teaching. It is not deadheading. It is knowing what you are cutting before you cut it. That is the actual skill. Same plant, same shears, and one perennial wants that cut, and the one right next to it will punish you for it. The whole game is telling them apart. And there is a plant standing in that exact border with you that demands this skill more than any other and gets it wrong more than any other. The hydrangea. Because there is not one kind of hydrangea, there are 6, and they split the same way your perennials just did. Some you cut now, some you must never cut now. And get it backwards, tidy it up at the wrong moment, and you will not kill it. It comes up next spring green and healthy and lush, and gives you not a single flower, because you cut off the buds that were already sitting there waiting. Same mistake, same shears. The most common gardening complaint there is. So I wrote the honest version of it down. It is called the Hydrangea Mastery Guide. All 6 types told apart in 90 seconds, because just like today, everything starts with knowing which one you actually have. The prune by type calendar, so you never cut at the wrong moment again. The real reason the color changes, which is not the pH, whatever you have been told. And the 5 myths that waste an entire season. 29 pages, $27, instant PDF, 7-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the description at waltgreer.com. And it ends the way this channel always ends, with the part nobody prints. 4 of the 6 types cannot change color at all, no matter what you pour on them. Fertilizer will never fix a hydrangea that will not bloom, because a guide that only tells you what to do is only half a guide. Now, the third group of perennials. The one people get most wrong of all. Because with these, the mistake is cutting them at all. Here is the third kind of perennial, and this is the one that separates a gardener who understands plants from one who just tidies. Because with this group, the mistake everyone makes is cutting them at all. These are the seedhead plants. The ones whose spent flowers are not a mess to be cleaned up, but the best thing they do all year. Coneflowers, the echinacea. Black-eyed Susans, the rudbeckia. Sedum, especially the big flat-headed types like autumn joy. Ornamental grasses, alliums, globe thistle, Joe Pye weed. When these finish flowering, they do not leave behind something ugly. They leave behind architecture, and here is what you are throwing away if you deadhead them out of habit. 2 things, and both are real. First, winter. A coneflower's dark seed cone on its tall stem. A sedum's flat, rusty brown head catching the frost. A grass gone gold and moving in the wind. When the rest of the garden has collapsed into bare dirt, these are what is left standing. There is a famous garden designer, Piet Oudolphe, who calls this the fifth season, the structure of dead seed heads and stems through winter. Cut these plants back in July, and you have signed up for a completely blank, dead garden from October to April. Second, and this is the one that matters most to me, the birds. Those seed heads are food. Through the cold months, goldfinches, chickadees, cardinals, and sparrows work a stand of coneflowers and rudbeckia and grasses for the seed. You will watch them perch right on the cones and feed. So when you deadhead these plants for tidiness, you are not just removing a bit of brown. You are taking the bird feeder out of your winter garden and taking the food off the table for the creatures that were counting on it. So with this whole group, the instruction is the opposite of the first group. Do not shear them. Do not deadhead them in the name of neatness. Leave them standing right through the winter and cut them down in late winter or early spring, just before the new growth begins. You get the flowers, then the winter structure, then the birds, and then you tidy up right before it all starts again. There is one honest exception, and it is about self-seeding. Coneflowers and rudbeckia and a few others seed themselves around, freely. For most people, that is a gift, free plants. But if you do not want them spreading, that is the one reason to deadhead this group. And here is the diagnostic. If you want more of that plant, or you want the birds, leave the heads. If you specifically want to stop it spreading, cut them. Your call, made on purpose, not out of habit. Now, a few last things to get right while you are out there. A few last things to get right while you have got the shears in your hand and the border open in front of you. First, water the plants you just cut back. This is not optional, and it is the twin of the feeding rule from earlier. You have just asked a plant to rebuild itself and produce a whole second flush of flowers in the hottest part of the year. It cannot do that dry. So the plants you cut hard are exactly the plants that need a deep, consistent drink over the following weeks while they push that new growth. Cut, feed, and water are one action, not three. Second, the vacation trick, because it is genuinely useful and almost nobody knows it. You can move a plant's bloom time on purpose. If a perennial normally peaks in the 2 weeks you are going to be away, cut it back now, and you will delay its flowering by a couple of weeks, so it performs when you are home to enjoy it. You are not just maintaining these plants, you can conduct them. Third, and this one saves lives in spring. Do not cut back the foliage of your spring plants that have gone dormant. Your bleeding heart, your oriental poppies, some of the early bloomers, will naturally yellow and die back in the heat of summer. That is not a problem, and it is not a plant you cut down in a panic. That yellowing foliage is feeding the roots for next year, exactly like a daffodil leaf does. Let it die back completely on its own, then remove it once it is fully brown. Cut it green and you weaken next spring's plant. And a general one that ties the whole video together. When you make your cuts, cut cleanly, just above a set of healthy leaves or a leaf node, with sharp bypass pruners for the stems and shears for the mounds. And keep those blades clean between plants, because a mixed border, with everything growing shoulder to shoulder, is the easiest place in the whole garden for a disease to travel from a sick plant to a healthy one on a dirty blade. So let me pull all three groups together, because that is really the whole skill. Before we finish, do one thing for me. Think of one person you know whose garden always looks tired and brown by August, who thinks that is just what summer does to a border. Send them this video, just the link. It might give them a garden that blooms until frost, and a full one all winter besides. Now, here is the whole thing, and it is really one idea. Standing in your border are 3 completely different kinds of plant, wearing almost identical clothing, and the entire skill of gardening in July is telling them apart. Group 1, the repeat performers. Catmint, Coreopsis, Salvia, Yarrow, hardy geraniums. Cut them back by 1/3 to 1/2, feed them, water them, and they hand you a second season. 3 or 4 weeks of bloom becomes 3 or 4 months. Be cruel. It is the kindest thing you can do. Group 2, the one and done. Peony, Iris, Delphinium, Columbine. Deadhead them tidy, but do not stand there waiting for an encore that is not in them. Enjoy the once. Let them build for next year. Group 3, the seed heads. Coneflower, Rudbeckia, sedum, grasses. Leave them completely alone. Because their spent flowers are your winter garden and your bird feeder, and cutting them for tidiness throws away the best thing they do all year. Let them stand until spring. Same shears, same afternoon, same border. 3 opposite right answers. And that is the thing I want to leave you with, because it is what gardening actually is, underneath all the tips. It is not doing the same thing to everything. It is looking at each plant and knowing what that particular plant needs, which is often the opposite of what the plant beside it needs. A person who shears the whole border to the ground is not gardening, and a person who never cuts anything is not either. The gardener is the one who walks down the border making a different decision at every plant. That is the difference between a garden that is tidy and a garden that is alive. So subscribe and stick around. We do this the honest way here in the Forgotten Knowledge Library. Real horticulture, exact amounts, and we tell you straight, including when the right move is to put the shears down and walk away. It is free, and it always will be. Next time, another job everyone does to the whole garden that only half the garden actually wants. Now go out to your border, and at every plant, ask the one question: cut, tidy, or leave. I will see you in the next one.